Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Kinetic. I'm your host, Jake, and today I'm joined by Santiago Velez, VP of Research and Development at, let's be specific here, XDFi creator, Syndric Solutions. You know, we got to add that tagline.
Perfect intro. Thanks for having me, Jake. I appreciate it.
Are you feeling good? Are you feeling happy on this glorious crypto Thursday?
Yeah, definitely. This is a good time. If anybody went through that bear market, things look really good right now. The macro doesn't look so great economically, but I think it's going to hang in there for a little while longer and long enough to see continued upside on the bull run. So as a builder, building in the bear market, to see the bull run finally come, and it's really nice. So I'm grateful.
You don't think the rug's going to be pulled out from under us and we're just going to go back into bear and everyone's just going to cry?
That could happen, but I think the probability is kind of low. I think we're kind of in a consolidation period here. And, you know, I'd be more worried if the Fed started cutting rates than I would be worried, because that means something is really bad that's happening. And they don't look like they're going to cut rates anytime soon. So I'm pretty happy about that.
So we're bullish. We're excited. But let's get into the actual interview. Why we're here to learn about XDFi. Now, it is XDFi. That's how it's pronounced, right?
Yeah, perfect.
It's not XDFi.
No. You know, and there's another company out there. I think it's spelled XDEFI. And we wanted to differentiate ourselves from that. And we wanted something pretty simple and succinct and with our brand. So yeah, it's just XDFi. It's perfect.
So we hate this other company. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. They beat us to it.
How dare they? You know,
the audacity.
I just found out about them 5 seconds ago, and I am disgusted. I must tell you. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and also the background of your team?
Sure, yeah. My personal background is in engineering. I was a nuclear engineer in the commercial nuclear power sector in the United States for about 20 plus years. Then I went down the crypto rabbit hole in 2016 and 2017 in that pretty crazy bull run. I got sucked into this space by price and the idea of making millions of dollars, right? And but I stayed for the tech, which is kind of a cliche. But I really went down this rabbit hole of understanding money and value, and something really compelling struck me to the point where I decided to leave my old career and pursue building things in pursuit of decentralization and Web3 and cryptocurrencies and those kind of things. So it was so compelling that I just did a 180 in my life, my career, and everything. And I've never been happier. I'm so grateful I made that choice. In hindsight, irrespective of bear markets and this and that, I've never been happier being in this space. I think this is the place to be.
Yeah, there's a lot of haters for crypto. You know, a lot of people, a lot of smug emojis out there. Yeah. Anytime something doesn't go well with crypto, but I think that there's a lot they don't get. There is a very magnetic force for a lot of us. You know, I often hear that term pulled in, and I think it's accurate. There's something that just, you get into that community and it's really hard to leave. And I think people on the outside think, oh, it's greed. Oh, that's why everybody's like excited. It's just they just want free money. I love free money. Don't get me wrong. But it's not about that. It's really, there's just something very attractive. There's a lot of energy. It's very engaging. And, you know, this probably nobody who's not already extremely with us is going to see this podcast. But if you are, you know, a crypto hater and you randomly stumbled upon this somehow, you know, maybe talk to some people, maybe give it a shot.
Well, if you don't have haters, you're probably not doing it right, is what I've come to conclude. Hatred or some kind of like reaction means that you're pushing the right buttons, you're going in the right direction. It means that the immune system of whatever it is you're trying to fix or cure is responding, right? And I've always viewed the traditional financial world and crypto as this very organic thing. And we're almost like this, I don't want to call us a cancer, but we're a mutation on the old system. And the old system is going to have a reaction like any foreign body that comes in. And until we can prove ourselves as complementary and that we're going to create value for that old system, we'll continue to see that reaction. But there will be a tipping point where it's very clear and evident to everyone that we're here to solve some real problems. And I think a lot of people in crypto see into the future in a way that a lot of other people don't, either through imagination or creativity, but they see into the future and they see a world that's definitely better than what we have now. And then they look at the current world and they see it declining rapidly. At least I do. And so I want to build things that are kind of a lifeboat that will transition us with as least pain from the old system to a much better system. So I'm super bullish about it.
Yeah, it's similar to art, right? It's a lot easier to turn hate to love than it is to turn apathy into love or for anything. You are not doing anything if someone doesn't have a reaction. That's all you. That's the real currency out there is attention. So no, I definitely agree with that. Now let's get to something that is probably boring for you to talk about. There's a lot of people that don't understand futures. They don't understand what a futures contract is. They don't understand what you're doing at all. Could you please, for those poor, unenlightened masses, could you please explain what a futures protocol is and what a futures contract is?
Yeah, so a future is essentially kind of what the name suggests. You're trying to guess at an outcome in the future about the price of some underlying asset. So for example, when futures were first invented, it might have been a corn farmer who they don't know what the weather is going to be like. They don't know what their yields are going to be like. And so there's uncertainty about that future. And you can create almost a kind of insurance product where you buy a contract that if certain outcomes in the future go one way or the other, it's a hedge on your risk, right? That you'll find a counterparty willing to take on some of that risk for a price and be able to hedge the uncertainty of just not knowing what's going to happen. So futures originally were contracts in commodities, so people could hedge the uncertainty of the future in whatever their product was: corn, gold, copper, all these things which have so many variables that are uncertain and unknowable. Eventually that became very financialized, and derivatives in general, which futures is a subclass of, expanded into a multi-trillion-dollar, maybe quadrillion-dollar financial industry. It dwarfs the equities and bond markets, real estate markets. It's the biggest market, if you will, for notional value in the world. So futures, we thought, is a great target market for us to start with a product that we could really decentralize. In the current structure, let's talk about the traditional world. Futures are done between two counterparties, someone who wants to take on this risk and somebody who wants to shed risk. And they usually refer in terms of going long on something or short on something. And it really is just an exchange of value for risk. And both parties are trying to best guess at what's going to happen in the future and best guess at where that price could go. And so they enter into a mutual agreement. Now, when it first started, they would do this peer-to-peer. And there were a lot of scammers out there. And some guy would sell a contract, and then when something actually came about, they wouldn't fulfill the terms of the contract and run away with the money, right? So that situation became untenable, and the government came in and said, okay, you need to have brokers who stand in the middle of two independent counterparties so that they can escrow those agreements and the value. And when those conditions are realized in the present that they were both speculating on, then the broker kind of disperses the funds or the arrangements accordingly. And so the broker became a central point of how fair, trusted contractual arrangements between long and short positions were handled and settled. So we thought, okay, well, here's this new technology that by design has smart contracts, which can essentially act like the broker. They can replace the need for an intermediary, but you still need that fundamental element of, hey, the future is now the present, and this price has now been realized, and you need a way to use that price to settle these contracts. So we thought, wow, Clear Network has essentially all of these elements, right? It has smart contract capability through the EVM. It has a wonderfully decentralized, competitive Flare time series oracle, which delivers best price and accurate price. And those two pieces were just prerequisites. I don't think you could really do a fair and true futures decentralized market without those two pieces. So the way our construction was, we said, hey, let's take the FTSO, let's take smart contracts, we eliminate the broker, we create clarity for both counterparties so that there's 100% confidence that when a contract does settle and when that price does materialize, they have full assurance that what is due to them is dispersed and settled. And so that was our goal. And we think that's a very fundamental and powerful primitive from which to build way more complicated kinds of financial products. So
I think it's interesting that so much of current technological development, cryptocurrency, AI specifically is what I'm talking about, is dedicated to the elimination of the middleman. We hate him. we hate them. It's, you know, it's getting harder and harder to make faster processors, and you know, we've got battery issues, right? Like we're hitting that ceiling. But one thing everybody's got their eyes on is like, here's some inefficiency here, and I love it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and you know, not to knock on middlemen, for a long time they served a really valuable role, and we put most of our trust in institutions to provide that service so that we could operate with less risk in the world. And that was fine. Insurance companies, brokers, financial institutions, these all serve valuable roles in society. So we can knock them, but I think the reason people resent them is because they've become so entrenched that they've forgotten that they are here to serve the customer. And they have now been kind of captured into being just a rent-seeking fee intermediary, right? And now that this technology is here, you really got to question whether they're necessary in all instances. I think we'll always have situations where you're going to need real-world intermediaries to facilitate things. But in purely financial transactions, I think we're at the point where the tech now really can disintermediate these entities and just make for more efficient financial systems, which is just lowers costs for everybody, makes things better.
Right. I mean, it's our issues with middlemen is usually like the ceding of too much power to that intermediary. And, you know, that's part of the dream of a trustless society, right? Is that we don't have to worry about, hey, is this guy going to skim off the top? Because that's automated. But, you know, if there are middlemen out there, we love you. I don't know. If you're like in the American medical industry and you're a middleman, I'm not happy with you. I
agree. Agreed.
It's that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare.
Doctor and patient really is what it should distill down to, right? That's it.
Yeah. So if you are a middleman in that industry, both of us don't like you. Maybe think of getting another job. So tell me about some of the, you know, at launch and looking to the future, some of the digital assets and later commodities that XDFi will support.
Yeah, so we're bound by these FTSOs. So whatever prices they deliver to the network, we intend to use. So we'll start with obviously the most liquid digital assets, Bitcoin, Ethereum. In our beta, we wanted to have people understand how it works, and those were the two we offered. And on our roadmap, we're going to quickly expand to the remainder of the digital assets that the FTSO in its current version offers. But in this version 2 of the FTSO, there's going to be far larger classes of assets and numbers. And one specifically we requested was commodities. And, you know, the largest commodities, things like copper and gold and Brent and crude oil and things like that are traded globally. because we think that as a showcase, those are the kinds of asset classes that would be very compelling for traditional finance. A lot of people talk about the Bitcoin ETF as a symbol that institutions have arrived, but I actually think the opposite. The Bitcoin ETF is a symbol that they can't arrive, meaning the only way they can get exposure through a digital asset or this bearer instrument is through this kind of layer 3 paper instrument, right? They have to buy it through an intermediary. It's kind of putting a square peg into a round hole, right? But that's not a declaration of victory. I think that when institutions arrive is when they can use these DeFi products in a way that meets all of their compliance requirements, and they have assurance that transactions will proceed, they can't get hacked, they can remain private, etc. So that's really what we're trying to build, is a platform that eventually institutions can look at and say, yeah, this meets all our requirements. And so I never answered one of your original questions, which is kind of where our team comes from. I was very selfishly all about me. So, so our team at Syndric, all developers who worked on Wall Street for over 20 plus years, from Morgan Stanley, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs. And what they did there was much of the back-end infrastructure for their trading systems. So their trading engines, their database infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, how do you scale and route orders between hedge funds in large pools of asset classes? Very complex. So they bring that pedigree to our back-end work, and we hope to use for XDFi. So when it is time and ready for institutional, it's at an enterprise grade level, and we can basically demonstrate to them, look, this is equal to, if not better than what you're using right now. And I think that's just another prerequisite. So yeah, that's kind of our big picture dream, right, is to enable this for both retail and institutional for all kinds of asset classes.
So do you plan to expand XDFi to any other networks outside of Flare?
So definitely Songbird. So we're going to start on Flare network as the main network. That was always our original plan, but we got so much feedback from the community demanding some Songbird love. So we said, well, it's very simple, right? Forking the contracts, and it's so similar architectures. So we're going to support Songbird very quickly after we launch on production on Flare. And then we'll see where the demand is. If there's demands on other networks, I think there's a lot of value in the FTSO on Flare being used on other networks. And I know Hugo has expressed that it's as a network for data, other networks should be using our Oracle system, right? So I think there's a synergy there in the future where we could bring the FTSO as we launch on other networks and offer these contracts, and then making them interoperable. One of the things that we wanted to do in our roadmap was to be kind of asset agnostic. So you can only buy futures contracts right now with FLR, the native token of Flare. On Songbird, it will only be SGB to start, Songbird token. So why? If there are F assets representing other networks or stable coins, you should be able to take a position using those assets as well. So our goal would be to quickly roll out that optionality for using those types of assets. And then if we were to migrate to other networks, then you get a more interesting matching problem, right? Let's say someone on network A wants to connect with someone on network B, and they're individually using different assets to purchase their contracts. What is the kind of volatility between those assets? And then how does that affect the contract that's matched? We do everything atomically on chain. So managing that volatility would be something that would have to be solved first, so that when disbursement occurs, it's very fair to all parties. They understand that part of that disbursement is the fact that you were right about your futures position. That was what started our conversation, but also that you took into account this volatility between the two assets. So that's something that we're working on right now actively. And then in the future, we hope to offer that. Because, if you have a bank in Japan, they're going to want to use yen stablecoin. And if you have a hedge fund in Europe, they're going to want to use euro, dollar, or maybe they want to use Bitcoin, FBTC, or whatever. But the best service, I think, would be to make that agnostic and then abstract it to make it as simple as possible. So,
Are there networks, kind of continuing this line of thought, that you're a fan of outside of Flare?
oh, sure.
Like,
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely very passionate about networks like XRP, Zahao, um, in that vein. There's just a lot. I find synergy with their communities, and with what they're trying to build. I do like the EVM in general. So any network that can support the EVM, whether it's natively on Ethereum or something, a layer 2, also is very compelling, if it can offer enough scalability without compromising on too much security. That's kind of the trade-off. So any network that we would kind of launch would have to meet all the criteria that Flare network currently has. And honestly, that's kind of a high bar, because Flare's got this great consensus layer. It's fast, it's cheap. It's got the EVM for smart contracts. It's got the FTSO, and it's going to have F assets. It's going to be a challenge, I think, for a lot of other networks to meet that bar. So for us to migrate there or offer it as an option, it'll have to be pretty compelling, and it'll have to be some strong demand from their communities.
Well, I definitely get the vibe that XRP is very close to your heart.
I love it. That's great. I wonder why you would get that vibe.
Yeah, I'm just pretty perspicacious.
That's great.
There's your $10 word for today. Tell me about the referral chain.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? How does it work?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess I'll start with, maybe everybody by now has heard Uniswap received a Wells notice. And Uniswap's in Brooklyn, which is not too far away from where we are in New Jersey in the United States. That was a concern of ours from the start. We had considered like an XDFi token, something that was fungible, could represent certain tokenomics and governance properties. But we were very concerned about the regulator in the United States. So we had to come up with another way where we could incentivize our community to support the growth of the protocol without giving an opportunity for the regulator to attack us, right? Increase our attack surface. So we said, okay, we're not going to do a token. We got to come up with another way. So we created something called a referral chain. A referral chain for us is something that, well, first of all, the way we make money is that when a futures contract is settled at the end of each day, and the funds are dispersed to the two parties, long or short, we take our protocol fee. And that fee right now is 0.5%. And so we said to ourselves, okay, we want to incentivize the community. Why not share this fee with them? What's the most effective way to share it with them? In traditional arrangements, you would issue a token, and then the token may offer a discount on the fee, or it may give you some governance powers or whatnot, but that token would almost represent the protocol itself. And then the market would price that in the value of the token, and there would be speculation. And so the community could get exposure to the protocol by this token. The problem we had with that was sometimes the tokenomics favored early entrants, and sometimes it favored biased governance. But that all aside, the primary motivation was the regulatory exposure. So the referral chain is us saying, okay, we're going to take half of our protocol fee, and we're going to give it to the community that shares the protocol. And by that, very specific words means that they don't have to use the protocol. So if you have somebody who doesn't know anything about futures, they're just an influencer, and they want to get protocol, the XDFi protocol traction, they share this code. And when they put the code in, we deploy on-chain smart contracts that when the disbursement comes at the end of the day, between long and short, they get half of the protocol fee. Now, we call it a chain because if people use your code, you create generations of fees. So let's say you had a code and you shared it with 3 people, you would get 50% of the protocol fees if they made trades. So if they make 1 trade, 50,000 trades, whatever number they make, you would collect 50% of the protocol fees. Now, let's say they share that code on to another generation of people. they would receive 50% and you would receive 50% of that. So essentially, as deep as your referral chain goes is your capacity to earn on the protocol fees. So we thought that was a very kind of compelling way of motivating people to share the protocol and have use get adopted. And then also kind of a way for the community, especially the ones most using it, to receive and accrue value back. So we'll see. No, I don't think anyone's ever built anything like that in crypto. It's kind of, I think, a first. So we're both proud of it and cautiously optimistic. We'll see if it ends up working or not.
Sounds like I need me a code.
Yeah.
Let me get one of them codes. So we've kind of touched on this in general about decentralization and governance. So are those things that are just very important to your long-term vision for your team?
Yeah, great question. Again, if we had a XDFi token, it probably would have bound together governance and value. And what we wanted to do is decouple that. So we have a governance token, which is non-transferable. So you can't sell it on an exchange. You can't sell your vote. And we thought that was important for a few reasons. One, we didn't want large holders of capital to be able to accumulate governance over the protocol. We see that problem in a lot of other constructions. So what we said is, okay, how do we grant people governance tokens? And we thought, well, the people who should govern the protocol are the ones who use it, right? It's like the citizens of the protocol should be the ones that make decisions about it. And so we said, okay, the more you use it, the more you accumulate governance tokens. So if you do X number of contracts in a period, that's how many tokens you would receive. Now, we were also very concerned about if early entrants accumulated large amounts of governance tokens into perpetuity, that they would be disproportionately powerful against new incumbents or new entrants, right? And that's not acceptable either. So what we decided is every quarter, when a vote is required, people do their voting and the protocol changes, all the governance tokens are completely burned. And everybody basically starts on a level playing field. And I think this is important from a long-term strategic perspective, because let's say you had a Fidelity come in and want to use a decentralized financial product. They would never accept a class of governance that's pre-existing, which would affect their business, right? I mean, that's just not acceptable. So they would say, hey, we're arriving, we want to use it, and we're going to have all our customers use it, and we're going to accumulate governance tokens this quarter. And that ongoing process would cement their role in the ecosystem in whatever proportion that they would bring users. So we think that's the most fair way to do governance and not have a token. So that was the challenge.
Right. Give people a chance to catch up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. No, that makes sense to me. I get the sense that, you're very good in the interview. You've done a lot of interviews, I would assume.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that in a lot of your interviews, there's stuff that doesn't get covered. Is there any topic or question that you don't get asked that you wish you would be asked in an interview?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a great question. Actually, I didn't anticipate that. But one thing I have not talked about, at least in this context, is our KYC token, which is a little bit controversial because people hear KYC and they think Gary Gensler, commanded it from on high. And that's nothing of the sort. For us, if anything, it's another barrier to regulatory attack. It's kind of a pragmatic acknowledgement that we live in a world where we have societies and laws, and we want to respect those, but without compromising the integrity of DeFi and without reintroducing new middlemen. So we said, okay, how can we facilitate peer-to-peer atomic transactions of this sort without compromising those values and still comply with our societies, wherever you may reside geographically? So we devised the KYC token as a way to at least prove to your counterparty that you're eligible. So it's not a way that we can control you, we can take your funds, we can seize, none of that sort. What it is just a way to prove that on the other side of the trade, it's not North Korea or Russia on a sanctions list, right? And I think that's an easy hammer that politicians who hate crypto use to bang on crypto. That, hey, you don't know who's on the other side of that trade. You could be facilitating money laundering and everything else. So we said, okay, that's fair. That's a fair critique. Why don't we build something where even if you don't know who your counterparty is, you at least know that they've gone through the same process you have, and they have a KYC token, and now they're eligible. So you don't know who they are, but you know they're not North Korea. And eventually we want to augment that with privacy, where you can do these transactions without revealing your entire trading strategy to the world on chain, without chain analysis being able to reverse engineer who you are. We want to introduce compliant privacy so that large parties can interact and do their trades almost OTC, but privately, and still be able to match and know that they're a valid counterparty. So that was our challenge, and we'll see if it's going to be successful or not, but at least we're trying to do that without compromising those values. And I think that's another kind of a unique thing we're doing as compared to a lot of other projects.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you're right about the government often using that cudgel of the Bitcoins are just from criminals. Like, oh, this random person's going to have a conference about cryptocurrency. What is it going to be about? We caught this guy. He had Bitcoins. We got him. Let's all clap for us that we caught a criminal who had Bitcoins.
Exactly. Right.
Like, why don't you do a press conference when you catch somebody who has like a barrel full of cash?
Right.
Why would we do that? The scary Bitcoins.
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's just such a low-hanging fruit. There's really no reason to even allow them to have that argument. But it is difficult. I mean, there is a libertarian ethos in crypto. Let's be real and acknowledge it. And it's usually, no way, we'll never bow down or comply, bend the knee. But that's not the point here. I think the point is to build in resistance to those kinds of baseless attacks, right? There's really no excuse. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm excited for it. I personally, I think that the future is, some kind of middle ground. Mm-hmm. I know that might sound scary.
Yep.
That might sound radical. But yeah, no, I think that there's got to be a way to satisfy some people, even if maybe they don't actually want to be satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they would have so many of those press conferences where it's the same thing over and over again. We're talking about cryptocurrency, but it's really just like we found some cartel member at Bitcoin,
right?
And we got rid of him.
Exactly.
And
I think the communities who would be using this, let's be real. I would challenge somebody to find a very liquid market or centralized exchange where you don't go through something similar. Everybody's done the picture passport thing in front of the reverse camera, and you're struggling there and you look terrible. Everybody's done that. So it's not a big ask or stretch. And the nice thing is, like, we don't collect anyone's personal information. We use a third-party licensed KYC provider. So it's not even Syndric or XDFi doing any of that work. We let the professionals who are good at that do it, and they know how to manage your data safely. And that's really outside of our purview. But we wanted to offer that as a service so that, again, when institutions want to engage or high-value clients, they will have the same assurances they're already accustomed to in the traditional world. So that was our goal.
I remember the first time I had to do that weird picture thing where it's like scan your entire face and make sure to get your ear in there. And
there's that little oval that you have to get your head in, move around.
I'm like, what if my head's not shaped that way?
It's scary if it is. That's the problem. If it is,
I'm not ovally enough. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was a great chat. I hope to talk to you guys and some of the other people I've interviewed. Once some launches happen, and once we've had a little time to sit with the community and stuff. If there's any kind of closing statements or calls to action that you'd like to shout out, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I guess for the community, we appreciate all the support. In our when we launched the beta, we got amazing feedback. A lot of things that, you know how it is. You write software, you just can't anticipate what people are going to do in the wild. And so we got just fantastic feedback. So we encourage the community to keep giving that to us, no matter whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. We appreciate it. We do intend to run another phase of beta with no real value. We want to make sure there's no damage done. So we'll run another phase and see if we can find more bugs. In parallel, we're having an independent audit done by FIO, the security group of all our smart contracts, and we want to find any exploit potential, any vulnerabilities, and close those all up so that it's as safe as possible on chain. You know, we want to practice safe trades. So we appreciate everybody in the community supporting us, and we're just going to keep going. Hopefully production, full production on Flare by early May, and Songbird sometime very quickly thereafter.
Super exciting. Well, you heard it here first, hopefully, unless somebody's doing a pirated stream. This has been another episode of Connecting with Kinetic.